We will start with module 3 of MEMS and microsystem design. In this module, we will be dealing with the different MEMS devices and the packaging process of the MEMS devices. We will learn about different MEMS sensors and actuators which uses the electrostatic, electromagnetic, thermal and piezoelectric effects. I will be studying about the bio-MEMS, biomedical MEMS, the optical MEMS, the microfluidics, and the MEMS packaging issues will be discussed in this particular module. Okay, so before we start with different kind of MEMS sensors, let's see what is a sensor. A sensor consists of a sensing element and a signal processing hardware associated with it. Okay, so when can I say that a sensor is a smart sensor? These are the different parameters that are required for a smart sensor. It should be able to do the automatic calibration. It should have indifferent signal reduction. It should be having the compensation for the parasitic effects inside it. It should have the offset correction options, as well as it should be able to do self-testing. So all these 5 parameters will make an intelligent system. So you can say that if the sensor is having these 5 properties, you can say that system as an intelligent micro system. We'll start with the first kind of sensor. We are going to discuss about acoustic wave sensor. So here this sensor is being made using a piezoelectric layer. Okay, and one of the main application of this particular acoustic wave sensor is to measure the chemical composition in a gas. Okay, coming to the structure of the sensor, you are having a substrate. On the substrate, you are having a thick film of piezoelectric material. Okay, so on the substrate, you are having a thick film of piezoelectric material. On the piezoelectric film, you are going to have a structure known as IDT. It is known as interdigital transducer. So two sets of IDT are created on the piezoelectric layer, and this piezoelectric layer is being attached to a substrate. Now you can see two sets of IDT, interdigital transducers, and the input IDT and the output IDT. The input IDT is being energized by an AC source. Okay, so in the diagram you can see that you are having the input energy. The input IDT is being energized by an AC source. So when the input IDT gets energized by the AC source, you can see the finger structure of IDT. Okay, so when it is being subjected to an AC source, these finger electrodes are having the gaps, and these gaps gets closed and open due to the AC source, and that will cause a surface deformation or stress. And this surface deformation and stress will be transmitted through the piezoelectric material. So you can see it will be transmitted in terms of surface acoustic wave. Okay, this surface acoustic wave, which is the surface deformation caused due to the surface deformation. Now this surface deformation or the stresses will cause the change of finger electrodes in the output IDT. So output IDT also has the similar finger electrode structure. So this surface deformation, which is transmitted in terms of surface acoustic wave, will cause a change in the finger electrodes of the output IDT. So based on that value, you will be having an output signal. So this acoustic wave transmission and the reception by the output IDT will produce a output signal. So, and that output signal will be almost a constant value. So when a change of material property happens due to the chemical attacks, so this acoustic wave sensor basically is being used for the measure of chemical composition in a gas. So when this sensor is being subjected to a chemical attack, or due to a chemical attack, or due to any geometry change due to the torques, Okay, this will alter the output value of the output signal. Okay, so normally the IDT was being energized by the AC source. Corresponding output was being generated in the output. Now, due to the chemical attack or some other reasons, this material property changes of the sensor, and that will cause a variation in the output signal. So that gives you the amount of chemical composition of in a gas. So that's how the acoustic wave sensor works. So the acoustic wave sensor is being operated based on two principal mechanisms: the piezoelectric effect and magnetostrictive. What it means by piezoelectric effect is the ability of certain materials to generate an electric charge in response to the applied mechanical stress. What it means by magnetostriction is that the conversion of mechanical energy into magnetic energy and vice versa. So one of the primary application of this kind of sensor is to act like band filters in mobile phones as well as base stations. The other applications of the acoustic wave sensors include the sensing of torques and tire pressure, sensing of biological and chemical substances, sensing the parameters, the physical quantities like vapor, humidity and temperature, and one more application is in the monitor of fluid flow in microfluidics, which will be discussed later. Now we'll start with the next area of MEMS, the optical MEMS. So we'll discuss about the optical sensors. The optical sensors are having a huge application in terms of communication or the telecommunication industry. So the optical sensors are used to detect the intensity of light. So what is the working principle of this particular optical sensor? Okay, so the energy conversion between the photons inside the incident light and the electrons in the sensing material. So the energy conversion between the photons that is being present inside the incident light and the electrons inside the sensing material. So that is the working principle of the optical sensor. Now we will discuss about the first kind of optical sensor. You are having a photovoltaic junction. It is being made using two dissimilar materials, the two semiconductors. Let it be taken as semiconductor A and semiconductor B, where semiconductor A is more transparent to photon energy inside the incident light. So this is a photovoltaic cell. This is being used as an energy harvesting technology. So the purpose of this photovoltaic cell is that it converts the solar energy into a useful electricity through a process, and that process is known as photovoltaic effect. So what it means by photovoltaic effect is that it is a process in which two dissimilar materials in close contact will produce an electric voltage when it is being struck by light. So this light striking the material in which the electrons are provided with the sufficient energy to break their bond. Now these free electrons will cross the junction and it will create a voltage, a potential. So this is the working principle of the photovoltaic junction, which is one kind of the optical sensor. See, the next kind of sensor, optical sensor, is the photoconductive device. So the photoconductive device or the photoconductive cells are light sensitive resistors. So this resistance value decreases. The resistance value of this particular device decreases with the increase in light intensity. So when the light falls on the photoconductive device, based on the intensity of the incident light, the resistor value changes. So if the light intensity increases, similarly the resistance gets decreased. So this is the working principle of a photoconductive device. Coming to next kind of sensor, uh, which is the commonly used optical sensor. You are having the photodiodes, and you can see the structure of a photodiode. You are having the p-type material and a n-type material, uh, and this is how the photodiode has been constructed. So this photodiode is it is a semiconductor diode which is being exposed to light. It generates a potential difference, or you can say in terms of it changes its electrical resistance. So you can say the definition of photodiode as it is a kind of p-n junction device that generates current when it is being exposed to light. And this photodiode is also known as photodetector. It is also known as a photosensor. So normally it is operated in a reverse bias mode, and it converts the light energy into electrical energy. Okay, and now when the photodiode is being connected to a reverse bias voltage, the electrons present in the p side and the holes present in the n side, they are the minority carriers. So when the reverse bias voltage is been applied, the minority carriers, that is the holes in the n side, experience a repulsive force. It experiences a repulsive force from the positive potential of the battery. Similarly, the electrons in the p side, that will experience a repulsion from the negative potential of the battery. So due to this movement, and the electrons and holes recombine at the junction, and due to this process, as a result, it generates a depletion region at the junction. Okay, now uh, when this junction is being illuminated with light, when the light falls on the junction, what happens over there is that if the photons striking the junction is having the sufficient energy, it will make a couple of electron hole pairs. Okay, now the holes in the region, uh, the holes generated, the electron hole pairs generated, the holes in the region, it will move towards the anode, and electrons will move toward the cathode, and that will cause a photo current to be generated. Okay, so that is the working principle of the photodiode. You can say that if the light intensity is more, so more charge carriers are generated and it will flow through the device. So if the light intensity is more, it will produce a large electric current through the device. Okay, so we can say that the intensity of light is directly proportional to the current that passes through the device. Okay, so this photodiodes is being used in a lot of applications. Uh, Coming to the next kind of optical sensor is the phototransistor. This phototransistor is a semiconductor device that is able to sense the light levels. Okay, based on the level of lights that is being incident on the phototransistor, that will change or alter the current flow between the emitter and collector, which is proportional to the level of light it receives. The optical sensors are fabricated using silicon or gallium arsenide. So these are the common materials that is being used for the optical sensor fabrication. Out of the silicon and gallium arsenide, the gallium arsenide is having higher electron mobility compared to silicon. And the other materials which are used for the optical sensor fabrication are lithium, sodium, potassium, etc. Coming to the next kind of sensors, we are having the thermal sensors. Okay, so the purpose of the thermal sensor is to monitor or measure the temperature uh, in the environment or in any of the engineering systems. Okay, so the thermal sensors are commonly made using the thermocouples or thermopiles. The thermal sensors work on the principle of electromotive force, the EMF that is being generated by heating the junction made using dissimilar materials. We will see the structure, how the thermal sensors has been made. Okay, we'll start with the first kind of the thermal sensor, the thermocouples. So this thermocouples are the most commonly used heat sensing devices, and the operation principle, as I said in the previous slide, is that it uses the principle of EMF produced, the electromotive force produced at the open end of two dissimilar metallic wires. Okay, two dissimilar metallic wires, when the junction of the wires, that junction of the wires is known as bead, is that particular bead is being heated. Okay, and when the bead is being heated, it generates an EMF, and that EMF or the voltage generated is proportional to the temperature rise at the junction. Okay, now you can see one more structure. It is known as a dual junction thermocouple. This dual junction thermocouple is being made by introducing an additional junction in the thermocouple circuit. Okay, you can see in the diagram you are going to have an additional junction. Right now you are having a hot junction as well as the cold junction. So why we are going for this structure is that, and now the two junctions, the hot junction and cold junction, is being exposed to two different temperatures. Okay, this is different from the first structure. In this structure, the two different junctions, two different beads, is being subjected to two different temperatures. That will introduce a temperature gradient, so that will give you a better idea in which direction the temperature variation is happening. Okay, that creates a temperature gradient. And now you can see you are having two junctions, a hot junction and the cold junction, and this voltage generated, you can see the equation over the V equal to beta delta T, where beta is known as the Seebeck coefficient, and delta T is the temperature difference between hot and cold junction. Okay, normally what we used to do is that this cold junction will be maintained at a constant value. Normally it will be maintained at 0 degrees Celsius by dipping this junction at a in ice water. Okay, and the coefficient beta, it depends upon the material that is being used for the wire, and the range of that is being the material that is being used to make the particular structure. Okay, so okay, so the Seebeck coefficient values for the different thermocouples have been shown over here. We are having different types, E, J, K, R, T, and S. So now the commonly used types are K and T types. Okay, so you can see the Seebeck coefficient values and the ranges in terms of degrees Celsius, and the amount of voltage that can be generated in terms of millivolt. Okay, now coming to the next kind of sensor, it is known as thermopiles. Okay, so why we are going for the thermopiles is that one of the drawback of the thermocouple is that when the size of the wires and the bead decreases, the thermocouple, the voltage generated also will be very less, so it will be difficult for the proper monitoring of the temperature. Okay, so in order to have a better option, we are going for the thermopiles. So thermopile is a more realistic solution. If you want to have a reduced heat sensing or a small heat sensing device, it is better to go for thermopile. Okay, so you can see the arrangement. what you're going to do is that you are going to place the thermocouples in parallel. Okay, you are having a number of thermocouples which is being kept parallelly, and the voltage output is connected in series. Okay, similarly you are having the hot junction and the cold junction, and the voltage induced, you can see the equation delta V equal to n beta delta T, where n is the number of thermocouple pairs in the thermopile. So you can, using this equation, you can find out the voltage induced, which is proportional to the change in the temperature. Okay, so coming now you can see a microthermal sensor which is being made using 32 thermocouples. Okay, and the thermocouples over here used is polysilicon gold thermocouple, and this thermopile is being implemented or is being fabricated on a silicon chip. You can see the dimensions of the silicon chip. You are having a diaphragm, and above the diaphragm you are going to keep the thermocouples, and that will form a thermopile. So you are having 32 such thermocouples, and the thermocouples used over here is the polysilicon gold thermocouple, and you can see the corresponding dimension of the silicon chip that is being used, and the typical output is in range of 100 millivolt, and it is having a response time of 50 millisecond. And in the right side you can see the fabrication detail. You are having a silicon support, a rim support, and you are having the diaphragm, and above the diaphragm you are going to keep the thermocouples, and you can see the corresponding hot junction, and in the outer area you are having the cold junction. So this is all about the uh, thermal sensors. So in this part we have started with the sensors. We have started with the good properties of a sensor, and after that we have seen the acoustic wave sensor. We have seen the optical sensors, different kinds of optical sensors, and the thermal sensors. In the coming sessions we will learn more about other kind of sensors and actuators, and the packaging of the sensors and actuators. Thank you.